We're saying nothing's going to change. In reality, everything is changing, right? And we're seeing it change. We're seeing it change in our households. We're seeing it change in how we work. We're seeing it change in how our kids go to school. We're seeing it change in the job market, right? And I heard recently, and I really thought that this was valuable, is how entry level positions are not going to be available in our job markets in the near future. And then how do we get people ready then to take on a mid-level role in an organization when you're a fresh college graduate, because you haven't had the opportunity to build some very critical corporate skill sets through those entry level positions.
Good morning, HR. I'm Mike Coffey, president of Imperative, bulletproof background checks with fast and friendly service. And this is the podcast where I talk to business leaders about bringing people together to create value for shareholders, customers, and the community. It's not an overstatement to say there's a lot of uncertainty in the business community, and especially HR right now. AI, tariffs, immigration, changing workforce demographics, and 100 other political and social issues are bringing out a lot of change in how organizations, large and small, conduct business. And there's just as much impact on HR as any other business unit. To discuss the importance of leadership during times of organizational change, I'm joined today by Monica Lloyd. Monica is a self-described OD nerd and the founder of People Forward, a consulting firm on a mission to create workplaces people love. She's also the co-host, along with her husband Clarence, of People Mavens, the podcast by people, for people. And she's state director of Michigan SHRM. So thank you for your service. And welcome to Good Morning HR, Monica.
Thanks, Mike. It's my dream to be on your podcast. No,
I love it when a guest says exactly what I tell them to say. So that's perfect. Yeah.
I knew
Now,
you'd
if you
love
were one of
that.
my
I knew you'd
kids, it
love
would
that.
be a miracle. Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's
But
cool. I'm so happy that we crossed paths and we're able to spend a little bit of time together today.
it's going to be fun. So, I mentioned all these different sources of change in my intro. As you're working with your clients, what seem to be the biggest drivers of change that they're facing right now?
Yeah, so a lot to do with funding uncertainty for sure,
For sure.
because I do a lot in the nonprofit sector, and so trying to understand how that's going to impact business going forward, and then with that, of course, certainly the integration of AI, varying degrees of acceptance of AI. You have people in organizations who don't want to have any part in it for a variety of reasons, including sustainability, which is actually a really it's a forward facing issue when it comes to AI. And I have some organizations whose mission has to do with sustainability, and so they are having a bit of a compass issue with how do we create efficiency with it that could really help our business while also understanding the sustainability impacts of AI and how that goes against our mission. So a lot to do with that. And I think a lot of it just ultimately boils down to how leaders are creating agile work environments that can respond to whatever comes down the pike today, tomorrow, next month, because the changes are so rapid, uncertain, looming. And we have to just be ready to respond to them while also keeping the troops settled and focused.
Yeah. And, when everything's going along fine, the market's working in your favor, your clients are happy, you're executing your mission, organizations' leadership tend to get a lot of credit. But then when things get bumpy, whether it's market conditions or business plans no longer producing the results we need, regulatory changes come along, maybe there's an acquisition, we're acquired, or we're bringing in another group, leadership starts to get really tested. Is there a difference in the kind of leader an organization needs in times of transition and change than the kind of leader they need when everything seems to be going our way?
I think that in all leadership positions, your leadership strengths need to dial up and dial down, right? Sometimes they need to shine in certain scenarios, and sometimes they can kind of take a little bit of a backseat. So I think that leadership itself remains the same, but the focus of it shifts. And I think that when you go through these times of challenge, the leadership deficiencies are on display more so than when things are just fine. So, to your point, one thing that I like to say is leading's easy when leading's easy. It's
Mhm.
like
Yep.
when there's nothing really to lead, like when the
Yeah.
leadership element is easy, then leading's easy, right? And it's easy to look good and all that.
Marriage
Uh,
is easy when
yeah,
marriage is easy,
you
right?
got it.
But,
Yeah.
God forbid the other
Yeah.
times, right? Yeah.
Yeah, 100%. Um, I think that it is the most secure leaders do the best in times of
Mm,
change. The leaders who can say, "We don't know. This is what we're up against as a business. We don't know how to quite navigate it the way we want to yet. But we're looking at it, we're working. Here's the things that we're looking at. Here's the resources that we're diving into. Here's the partnerships that we're building to help support that." Because the staff know when something isn't right. I mean, sometimes we just think, I don't know, I don't think this, but sometimes I think leaders think that maybe the staff are just aloof, or they'll just, show up and do the good minion work. But the staff are smart and they know when something's a little bit off, and they also understand what's going on in the markets, and they listen to the news, and they understand that we've got some real challenges. And so then when no one's talking honestly and transparently about the
mhm,
challenges, that's when you start to lose trust. And a lot of leaders, I think, make the mistake of saying, I'm going to lose trust if the staff know that I don't know. And the reality is that you build amazing trust when you can say, I don't know, but here's what we are doing. Here's what
mhm.
we need you to do. Here's going to be our communication cadence. Here's how we're going to try to create a through line of stability in the middle of the storm, right? Every Tuesday, you're going to see a message from me. Every Thursday, you're going to be meeting with your leader about the week recap, whatever it is. But when we try to add systems of stability in the chaos, that is when we really can anchor the staff in the right focus, the right mission, get all the stories that they're telling themselves out of their mind and all that fear, so they can be successful in this time of change.
Yeah, I think transparency and there's probably a direct correlation between transparency and the security that a leader has in their own ability, their ability to figure it out ultimately.
Mhm.
We'll either be okay or we won't. But sitting here staring at our navel, twiddling our thumbs isn't going to get us there, right?
Right.
And in my corporate world and working with clients over 30 years, I've definitely experienced that, seen that firsthand, maybe fallen victim to it a couple times where the scope of the change seems so much that I feel like I need to be that beacon of light to my people. They need to, I need to be, in, indomitable. They can't
Mhm.
have, see any fear or any second guessing on my part, and that's never worked out well.
Right.
And I've surrounded myself with people that I trust, and I should be able to say, you know what, I don't know. We got to
Mhm.
figure this out. And, I need your input, and let's sit down and we'll try this. If this doesn't work, we'll do something else, but we'll make it happen. But I think that's hard for a lot of leaders to do. How do you coach when you're coaching your leaders? How do you coach them to kind of say sometimes, yeah, the king doesn't have any clothes, and I need to, I need to try, we need to try stuff.
Yeah. So it really goes to kind of the imposter syndrome that everybody carries
Hmm.
around, right? And saying, helping them understand the human element of what's going on, right? People are afraid. You're also afraid as the leader, right? And the best way to get rid of fear is to just shine a big old sunshiny light on it, right? I mean, that's how you get rid of disease. And you just need to make sure that you're opening that up, because things that we try to hide, um, fester. And so taking the time to just work with them on their mindset of why, what about you saying you don't know? What do you think that says about you? Right? And it immediately talks to that imposter syndrome. Well, that I'm not a good CEO, that I'm not a good leader, that I am not capable of this role, that I'm at risk with the board, that I'm at risk with the staff, all those things. And then, why is that your narrative, right? And what could come of it that's positive and good, and how can this help build resilience within your team when you lead by example, right? I mean, being a leader isn't having all the answers. Being a leader is being able to take a lot of different pieces of information and think about it strategically and decide which way we're going. But to be a great leader, you need to be able to think about those things. And it's okay to tell people that you're thinking about those
Hmm.
things. It shows them that we need to think about things. It also creates the environment for them to say, I don't know, which eliminates mistakes. It improves quality. It increases safety, right? To be able to just be honest about what's going on. So it's really a lot of mindset work. And then it is a small win, right? Okay, so let's not do it in front of the whole staff. Let's do it in front of a team, right? And let's get their feedback. And I'll tell you, 99% of the time when the leader does it right, they get an overwhelming positive response from the staff, right? Gosh, I wish someone would have told us this sooner. This makes so much sense. Oh, I understand now, right? And then I think the other issue with leadership when we're kind of in the middle of the storm is they feel more drawn to the closed door, right? More drawn
Mhm.
to the reflective time, the thinking time, the strategy time, and they forget to get out with the people. And again, the people know that something's up. And so even working it into your day to round either virtually or in the office, be present, right? Create that cadence of presence with the people is extremely important because it's so easy to say, gosh, we got a lot of unknowns. We got a lot of big problems. What are we going to do? Let's just sit here in the war room as an executive team and think, 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 and we miss the opportunity to engage the folks in this interesting time, but then also to engage them in the solutions, right? I mean, get your people who are top performers, who understand their department, who who love stretch projects, and get them in the room and say, all right, team, this is what we're up against. What do you think? Right? I mean, no one person is smarter than the room, so let's build the room for solutions.
Yeah, and I think that that vulnerability is difficult, but also, and I definitely had this when things are. I mean, right now we're in the middle of this whole. We have to give a dumb name to everything that happens in the labor market, but now it's called job hugging. And so that affects the background screening side of my business, because when people aren't quitting their jobs, my clients aren't hiring new people,
Right.
and the economy being what it is, people aren't adding a lot of jobs right now. We'll see what happens there, but that changes how we think about stuff. And my gut reaction is always, okay, I need to come back to my office, and roll my sleeves up, and bury myself in this data and figure. And I can kill myself with paralysis by analysis and just get more and more, because I don't want to. I love my people. I don't want to give them the anxiety and all of that, but they see what's going on. That we have metrics. We live and die by metrics in our organization, so they know on a given day, hey, this is the amount of work that came in. Right, this is the amount of what our production was. This is what our quality. They see all those numbers every day, so there's no surprises. And I think if I just stay here and be quiet about it or don't address it, all I'm doing is saying, hey, yeah, the ship may be sinking or maybe it's not, and you're not getting a direction from the captain, so you better jump overboard and before it
Mhm.
sucks you under. And so I really struggle with that, because my instinct, especially as an entrepreneur, is, okay, I solve problems for a living. Let me just solve this problem. But sometimes I need more input than just what I can do.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And it engages the team in really cool ways too, right? And you can see how their thinking works and also help shape some thinking. So it can be used as co-development across the board. Otherwise, we just leave them in their own office and own heads to just tell their own stories, which,
Yeah.
we're trained as humans, like our brains work to keep us safe. And so we imagine the scariest possible thing so we can plan to stay safe during that scary impossible time,
Right.
right? So, but that doesn't serve us. And likely the reality is that you're not going to go through the actual scariest possible scenario of
Right.
this. Yeah. But leaders have to do it right and well. I mean, you still have to have that confidence and stable presence while you're indicating that you're working through some things and there are some unknowns. I mean, you can't just go in there and be like, "Oh my gosh, it's wild.
Freak
We have no
out.
idea what's going on. We don't know if we're going to cut staff. We don't know we're going to get our money." Like you can't. You have to
Yeah.
watch, the presentation of it, certainly. But if you do that right and well and you operate with that transparency, you're setting the business up to win, you're setting your team up to win, you're setting yourself up to win. It's really it's the right thing to do in my opinion.
So if we're facing significant change, and it could probably be, like, again, acquisition, change in leadership, or loss of key leaders just because of the boomers are retiring finally, and all those things. changes in the market, what are the first things that that transparent leader that you're talking about ought to do to kind of set the tone, set the narrative straight, so that people understand we have this in hand. We're going to figure this out.
Yeah, I mean, first and foremost, refocus on the why, right? Why do we do the work that we do? What is our mission? No matter what changes in our environment, in our staffing, in our strategy, the mission lives on, and you make a difference every day in what you do to live out our mission, right? And then you tie that to story and you tie that to impact. That is a stabilizing through line that doesn't change, right? And so, like, getting people to refocus on that is the first and foremost. Then creating stability inside the organization the best we can, right? So even if that means we're going to have a new way of communication, we're going to have a new way of checking in, we're going to have a new way, like as much stability as you can create in the chaos is the second thing that you need to do. And then thirdly, the leader being honest about what we know, what we don't know, what we're thinking about, is extremely important. But then, how can the team help get the team going? Right? I mean, the reason why when something scary happens, people, you have an adrenaline rush is because your body wants to take action. Like your brain wants action. And so let's give the people some action, right? What can they do to help us? When you start to feel like this, here's what you do. When you see this, here's what you do. When a team member is doing this, here's what you do. Right? And so when we can start to anticipate the experience of our staff in this season, and help them with the action to take in those moments, we're filling in some really, really critical gaps that settles down their amygdala in their brain and allows them to be in control. And honestly, this whole thing, all of it, everything in life comes down to, do I feel in control or do I not feel in control? And so the best we can do is to try to give people that sense of clarity and control in these situations.
What role do you think organizational values and cultural norms have during times of change?
Yeah. I think that organizational values are extremely important to the customer. I think that cultural norms are more rooted in the team members. And so I know and this is just my own perception of this. I mean, core values, yes, are internal, but they have a lot to do with how we deliver for the mission for the people that we serve. Cultural norms are how do we work together? And
Mhm.
so I think that having those cultural norms defined, and then in the times of change, if we need to adjust a cultural norm, we can and we will, right? Cultures should shift to meet the demands and the needs of the business. And so if we are in a state where, hey, we need to have our culture needs to have a new element of clarity across communication channels in order to get through this time. Here's a part of what we're going to adopt as a cultural norm and until further notice, right? As we're in this season. And so they act as anchors and as solid ground for people, again, creating some of that consistency that people can link into and know what to expect, right? The unknown is scary. So as much as we can help them understand what to expect, uh, redirect focus away from the things that they can't control back to those cultural norms, back to the action that they can take, they can be extremely valuable and beneficial. They're also familiar, right? I mean, that familiarity can be really helpful in times of uncertainty. Um, and it can create a level of resilience in the people because they've got something to hold on to. They've got something that they know isn't going to change, even as a result of all the change that could be happening. We don't know when.
And so sometimes we have that issue where, yeah, how we're doing business, let's say AI, how we're doing business is going to change. And that's going to change some of our cultural norms, some of the ways that we as an organization have traditionally maybe engaged our employees, how we've selected employees, how we train and develop employees. And I mean, if we're being honest, we may end up in a position where we don't have as many seats for people to sit in as we did. And and I think for the first couple years of AI, we all knew this is, you know, it's going to be more than just AI is not going to take your job. Somebody using AI is going to take your job. Now, I mean, there's going to be jobs that just don't exist anymore. I mean,
Yeah.
and so people, but I think a lot of leaders were saying, oh, yeah, it's not going to happen. It's not going to happen. And now we see 14,000 jobs at Amazon are gone. And these
Yes.
IBM, all these companies, FedEx, that's just the reality. And if we bluff our way through, nothing's going to change. Nothing's going to change. We lose so much credibility with the rest of our team.
Yes, because we're lying to them,
Yeah.
right? We're saying nothing's gonna change. In reality, everything is changing, right? And we're seeing it change. We're seeing it change in our households. We're seeing it change in how we work. We're seeing it change in how our kids go to school. We're seeing it change in the job market, right? And I heard recently, and I really thought that this was valuable, is how entry level positions are not going to be available in our job markets in the near
Right.
future. And then how do we get people ready then to take on a mid-level role in an organization when you're a fresh college graduate, because you haven't had the opportunity to build some very critical corporate skill sets through those entry level positions. And so we're going to have an extreme need organizationally to learn how to upskill people in corporate understanding, knowledge, skill sets very soon. And the value of internships in organizations are going to be, I think, way more valuable than they have been. I mean, they've always been valuable, but I think that we are going to need them so much more because it's going to be a critical piece in addressing that skill gap and helping people really develop those low mid-level skills where they can actually start a career and work their way up. But it's going to be really hard to get your foot in the door anywhere to be able to build those skill sets, because all those entry level positions that you normally would be well positioned for aren't going to be available because they're going to be AI based.
Yeah, and I had Leslie Thomas of Criterion on last week, and we were talking about this. And I think employers are going to have to make, especially mid-size and large employers, are going to have to make the decision to hire people even when AI can do the work, because you're
Mm,
going to need that young talent to come in, grow up inside the organization, and then you're going to need to keep retain them. And so that's going to be the real challenge in all of this change, is keeping them, these young, talented, smart young people, engaged enough that they don't feel like they're office drones, or they're just a replacement for the AI, and you're just waiting for the next technology to replace me. With the understanding that, hey, we're making a long-term investment in you, and because one of the things we've got to figure out is how to stop the turnover in those young professionals. It's they see the money, and we all know that's the best way to get a big raise, is to go to the next employer. But I think it's going to be harder to do that in the coming market until you've really got, a quiver full of arrows that you can, really rely on. And then once you've invested in those people, some of them are going to leave, but you've got to find ways to keep them engaged as long as you can, so you get the most out of that investment.
yeah. And what an employer brand differentiator to say, look, we guarantee that 50% of our entry level positions are filled by humans. Like that's our
Mhm.
commitment to the human race and the success of our people, right? Is we want people to be able to be gainfully employed. And you know what? It works out because of how the job market is shifting. And we know we have less, our households are much smaller. We're having less kids. And so, yeah, maybe 50% of your entry level positions being AI based actually works and makes more sense. But then 50% being for the humans is equally as
Mhm.
important. That's a huge employer brand differentiator. And this generation wants to do business with people who have values and beliefs and care about humanity and the success of people. And just think about how you could market that and be an employer of choice as that being a part of your employer brand strategy.
If we're in that role, or we are having that, we're cutting jobs. I mean, we just don't need X number of people doing this work. We can be done by 2 people and 3 AI agents doing the job of 6 others. Um, when we're looking at our total workforce, I started my career in aerospace. And so I saw, funding up, funding down, layoffs, hiring sprees, layoffs, hiring sprees. And it was always last in, first out for the layoffs. I think we have to get smarter about that. Talk about identifying key talent and making sure you retain not just your best performers today, but your high probability of success employees that are going to be into the future.
Yeah, absolutely. So that's a combination in my world of a 9 box and a stay interview, right? So when we when we start thinking about who's got the potential and the performance, and we're looking at that, and then we're talking about the people through our stay interviews who are actively engaged, who are willing to communicate about the pain points, right? They're not just going to say everything's fine and just then leave up and leave, and we never got a shot to help make it right if we were making a mistake as an employer for them that we weren't aware of. So seeing that shared transparency from the team member and then looking at that potential and performance, I think is really key. Um, I also think we don't do enough career planning where we can show people what your actual trajectory in this organization looks like.
This
You
is
know,
what the path would look like.
yes,
Yeah.
yeah. I mean, I'm doing project work with a client right now to develop entry level positions in hospitality for their cooks and their hosts and their concession stand workers, and showing how exactly how you can get up to director level and building competency around that, and building relationship maps for who you need to have relationships with. You got these people should
Hmm.
know you if you want to grow in this role. Here's how you develop in these competencies if you're not in this role, but this is what this role requires. So a whole map. I mean, it's a web, but what it shows is that I can come here with a very limited skill set and make it into a leadership position if I want to, right? If I want to give what it's going to take to be proactive in building the relationships, to be proactive in looking at the jobs that I'm interested in and how they path together, and developing in the competencies. I still have to do the work, but the organization is setting up the team member for success if they want to do that work. And so I think seeing people who are actively engaging in what the organization has made available to them as a part of that career path is extremely important, because if I can't see as a team member where I'm going to be able to go, then I just have to start thinking about my own career and saying, well, it looks like I'm just going to be here forever because my boss is never going to leave. And no one has showed me where I could go or how I could grow in the organization, then I am going to leave, right? So investing more time and effort in that individualized career path, I think, is going to be a huge piece too.
Yeah, and I think we're seeing that, especially Gen Z. All three of my sons are Gen Z, are increasingly less interested in climbing the ladder and being managers, supervisors, and they're seeing Amazon. I mean, the majority of these layoffs from the most recent layoffs in Amazon were middle management. Uh,
Hmm.
you don't need those with AI and its ability to keep track of processes. You don't need all those layers of manager, project manager over this manager over this manager.
Yeah, you can
And
automate it all.
right. And so I think companies need to think more about horizontal cross
Hmm.
training, opportunities to learn other skills and others, keeping people engaged. Just because somebody is good at this job, oh, well, they're really good at this. We don't want to lose them to the other department. Well, you're going to lose them to another company and
Yeah.
you're going to lose all that investment if you haven't taken the time to give them the opportunity. Some will want to climb up, but I think, there are a lot of people who just have no interest in being a manager, but they've become supervisors or managers because that's the only way to make more money in the organization.
Yeah, and that dual career path is something that we talk about a lot. Is you have to have a path for people who want to go and manage people, but you also have to have a path for people who just want to be experts in their field and
Mhm.
experts in the role. And if you don't offer two paths, you're going to get leaders who don't want to be leaders, and you're going to destroy your company, because you need leaders who want to deal with people and lead real humans. But if the only way that I can get more money is by getting into a manager role, then I hate it here, but I get the paycheck. And so I'm not going to leave. And then my team's miserable, my department's miserable. But if I can make the same amount of money as operational expert, as a 2, 3, 4 internal consultant or trainer or whatever that is, where I don't actually have to lead the people, but I can just share my expertise and be compensated because of my tribal knowledge and organizational value and how I stay current on everything, there should be that option too. So that way you are making sure that people are picking the track that best fits them because the bills still come and people want more money, right? I mean,
Right.
people want a certain lifestyle. Some people do. I mean, I want people to have a lifestyle that makes them happy, but usually a bit more money never hurt anybody. And people, I
Yeah.
think, tend to appreciate that.
Yeah, it may not make them ultimately more
Yeah.
happy in the job, but I mean, there are realities that,
Yes.
we have to pay bills, we have things. Um, Talk about the idea, I've been in organizations where one department was getting a message from a manager about the state of the organization, and a different department was getting a completely different message. How do you get all the leadership on board with the same message without it sounding like, Valley of the Dolls or Payton Place, where everybody is, on the same, are all drones.
Yeah, I'm a huge fan of decisioning papers. So essentially, here is something that is just for leadership, right? But it gives you the background into why we did what we did, the decision that was made, the external forces that we were looking at, the budget constraints, all the things. It gives the leader the background that they need to be able to have that quality conversation with the team member to help manage that change. And then also gives them for their information only and then external talking points. So here's for you to have in your strategic backdrop. Here's the consistency and the message that we want to deliver. And so how you want to deliver that consistency, you don't have to just like read the talking point. But so often we say, okay, executive team, COO, you go tell your team, and CHRO, you go tell your team, and CFO, you go tell your team. And but the reality is that we're human, and so whatever I am hearing in the meeting, even if I'm hearing it next to my chief peer, we are hearing something slightly different, and then we are communicating it to our team slightly more different than that. And then the alignment, as we go across the organization, just goes like that, right? And we get more
Right.
and more misaligned.
It becomes a game of telephone, really. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a game of telephone. So, having a formal process to actually document the decisions that we make, why we made them, give the leaders the talking points, the background message, all of that. And then that becomes familiar when a decision comes down the pike. It's like, okay, leader, here's how you're equipped to help lead that change. Because the change management and change leadership is at the mid level, right? And that needs to be a solid, informed, competent, confident level. And in order to do that, you have to equip them and share with them, and don't just say, well, I don't know, it's what my boss said to do, right? Like, we need to demand more and provide our middle managers more so they can actually lead those changes effectively like we expect them to. And then all of a sudden we're all confused why it's not working. Well, we haven't equipped them with any sort of consistency. So I love that decision document.
And one of the things that I'm sure you've seen and I've seen is management who, when they deliver bad news, wants to make sure you understand it's not them.
Yeah.
It's, corporate's making me do this, or, oh, I'm so sorry about these changes, or that you're losing your role, or this, whatever it is, rather than just say, this is something we all own. We got to fix it. Here's how our team contributes to that. They're saying, "Oh well, those guys at corporate are really throwing us under the bus here, aren't they?"
Hmm.
Bummer. So how do you, and it goes back to the Good Morning HR drinking game, is that we put people in management positions without training them to be good managers. So they're a great technician, and so bottoms up. And so, but how do what do you say to train those folks to deliver the message the right way, uh, that builds trust in the entire organization from those leaders, employees?
Yeah. I think that again, it's working on the mindset and understanding that as humans, we are bred to be part of tribes. And when we feel like our tribe is at risk, we want to try to preserve that membership with the tribe, right? And so then as leaders, our tribe is normally our department. It's the people that we lead, right? And so we end up having our first team being the staff that we lead, when really our first team should be the organization and our peer leadership team. We should be shouldering that stuff together. But helping them understand, when you say this is the next level up leader, corporate's making us do this. what it demonstrates is a lack of positioning for you as the leader in the organization, because you didn't have a say. It sounds like you don't know what's going on. It sounds like you're not around the decision making table. And so for you as a leader, you're not positioning yourself to have any sort of respect or competence or even authority. You become unnecessary to that team member because you're just the messenger now, right? You're not helping them understand. You're not helping lead them. You're not creating a level of confidence and competence to move the needle forward. um, and it damages your relationship with your team. And it creates divide within the organization. And so ultimately, if what we want is a healthy organization with engaged people and teams, we have to make sure that our message is a unified message and that we're equipped to deliver it in a way where we still feel connected to the tribe. We've got the talking points that we need to have to be able to have the conversation right and well, and not miss that opportunity to help that team member move forward. Because when our hands are tied, they feel like their hands are tied and then they just have to. When we could say, like, look, it was interesting for me too when I first heard this, right? And I was a little uncertain also. Here's what I learned that made me feel more confident in this, and it helped me understand it a bit more. And I want to share these things with you. So here's what's going on. Here's what we have to consider. Here's where we need to go. Here's what we need from you. Here's what I'm going to do for you, right? With that level of information and confidence. So we don't miss that opportunity to build trust, and we don't accidentally create a divide between leadership and the organization, which is what you always see in engagement surveys is the leadership's out of touch. The leadership doesn't listen to us. And a lot of that has to do with how middle management communicates the leadership persona to the team members.
You mentioned engagement surveys, and I think it's often we take the temperature after the patient's already dead.
Yeah.
Talk about the kind of tools that employers should be using to take the temperature of the culture, employee engagement, commitment, where their heads are.
Yeah. One of my favorite tools for that is just a recognition system, actually, and seeing how the team members engage in peer to peer recognition.
Yeah.
See how the team members engage in understanding what good work looks like and how people live out our core values. Because if you have a recognition system in place, and the leaders should not be the only people to own recognition, everybody should own recognition, just like everybody should own culture, just like everybody should own accountability. But we need to equip people to be successful in that. And so if you have a recognition system in place, and what you're saying is everybody has a responsibility for recognition, and then you're seeing how active that system gets, I think it's a really good indicator of who's engaged at work and who's not engaged at work.
Mhm.
Um, because if I'm here and I'm excited about the work that I'm doing, I'm excited about the work that other people are doing too, right? And so then I want to recognize that work and I want to celebrate that work. So that's one way. I also think that, in these types of engagement surveys, we ask so many questions and then we focus on the wrong stuff. And really, at the end of the day, it's like, why do you choose to come here? And what makes your work difficult? And when's the last time you were just super annoyed with something? And
Mhm.
like really getting into the actual experiences of our team members. If we can really understand the employee experience, we can do a lot better at designing for engagement. And I think sometimes we're just a bit too in the clouds with engagement instead of really just getting at the line level and asking the few right questions that can really unpack and identify, uncover some of the biggest pain points that it's like, oh, we can fix that. And that experience for you as a team member is now so much better, right? And the improvement there, it actually gives us action that we can take. We can show that we're doing better. So I certainly think that we should take the pulse of the staff. We should hear from them. But I think when it becomes just a routine formality to get the badge on the signature line,
Mhm.
it doesn't actually serve the purpose, and we're doing it. We've lost sight of the reason why we want to do this, which is to really understand our employee experience and make it better and take care of the people who choose to come and give their time, talent, and energy with us every day.
And let's take a quick break. Good Morning HR is brought to you by Imperative, bulletproof background checks with fast and friendly service. You know, if all your applicants were honest, we'd be out of business. But because they're not, we stay pretty busy. I want to tell you a quick story. One of our clients is a white glove professional services firm, and they were about to hire a senior leader from inside their industry at a salary well over $150,000. And of course, they sent them to us for the background check. Immediately, we identified that the date of birth that the applicant, the senior level person, gave us was different than the one on their driver's license. So that's kind of a red flag. It was off by more than a year. But sometimes people make typos, so our standard process is to reach out to the candidate and see if we could clear it up. He immediately disputed the accuracy of the date of birth information received from the state DMV. So he was saying the date on my driver's license is wrong. And so in almost 30 years in this business, I've never seen that error before, like the wrong date of birth on a driver's license. But yeah, we'll give him benefit of the doubt. So we sent him a link to complete our biometric verification process. You've heard me talk about it before. It's the process where the candidate uses our app to take a selfie and take photos of their identity documents. And then our AI examines the photo of the ID to verify that the document appears legitimate and that the photo on the ID matches the selfie they took. So that should have taken maybe 5 minutes, but he kept pushing us off for several days with all kinds of excuses. And so my spidey sense is going wild when my team brought it up to me. And then when he finally attempted to complete the biometric verification, he failed it. Our tool determined that the image of his passport, which is what he was going to use for his ID document, was actually taken from a computer screen and not the original passport. In other words, he had edited a photo of his passport to change his date of birth. And while one section of my team was dealing with all of that, our public records team was conducting his criminal history research using the date of birth that came back with his driving history. And then everything came into focus. It turns out that this guy, who remember had doctored his passport to change his date of birth, this guy had a criminal history that included, wait for it, forgery, issuing false documents, theft, unlawfully taking a motor vehicle, and telecommunications fraud. Altogether, he had over 10 criminal cases and was sentenced to 15 years in jail, which weirdly he only served 2 of. And even though the name and address on the criminal cases matched his information, we still had the issue that the date of birth on those records didn't match what he insisted was his actual date of birth. So maybe these cases belong to someone with the same name who happened to have the date of birth that was on this guy's driver's license? Well, just to be extra sure, we pulled his mugshot from one of his many arrests and compared it to the selfie that he had provided us during the biometric identity verification. It was the same dude. He had gained a few pounds in the last few years, but who hasn't? But it was him. So we definitely did all of this the imperative way, dotting all our I's, crossing all our T's. But here's the kicker. All of his convictions were between 8 and 14 years ago. That means that most background screening companies wouldn't have reported the information to the employer because they apply California's strict 7-year conviction rule to all of their reports, even in states like Texas where older convictions can be reported. So ultimately, we reported all of this to our client, and they made the appropriate, well-informed hiring decision. The story is kind of an example of why Imperative is different than most of the other screening companies. We're really diligent, we work all the angles, and we do everything we can to make sure our clients make well-informed decisions about the people they involve in their business. And to learn more, visit our website at imperativeinfo.com. If you're an HRCI or SHRM certified professional, this episode of Good Morning HR has been pre-approved for an hour of recertification credit. To obtain the recertification information, visit goodmorninghr.com and click on Recert Credits. Then select episode 225 and enter the keyword CHANGE. That's CHANGE. And if you're looking for even more recertification credit, check out the webinars page at imperativeinfo.com. And now back to my conversation with Monica Lloyd. And then doing something with the data is the other thing that I see a lot. We love to do surveys. We love to do exit interviews. We love to do stay interviews. Um, but those are one, and surveys are one way to do it. But you've got it, whether it's a town hall meeting where you're soliciting feedback, it's one-on-one management conversations with the team. You've got to aggregate that information and do something with it. So talk a little bit about how to go about doing that in a way that's effective.
Yeah. I think that you're 100% correct is we
That's
have to.
always the right answer.
Yeah.
You're 100% correct, Mike. That's
Yes.
always
Yeah.
the right answer. Okay,
Like,
go ahead.
you're 100% correct. Um, you have to do something with it, and you have to tell the people why we're gonna do what we're gonna do and why we're not gonna do what we're not gonna do.
Mhm.
Because sometimes we get so many areas of opportunity that we can't quite pick which one we need to get after. And then they all seem like too much, or we have leadership who reasons their way out of whatever it is, right? Well, that's because back in October, we, missed a thing and everyone was mad about it. So that result doesn't really count, you know? Um, and a lot of that again is fear based. A lot of it is lack of confidence in how to actually fix the things that are coming up. Um, but really saying, look, we found 23 areas of opportunity that really stuck out in the survey, and we've decided that we want to focus on one of these five, right? And then even re-engaging the staff with, which one do you think is the most important for us to focus on, right? And now we're getting them engaged in the actions that we're actually taking, but we're also able to say, these other 20, here's why we decided to go with these five, right? We looked at through these filters. But again, we're bringing that level of transparency and working with our humans and adults like they are humans and adults, right?
Yeah.
I mean, they're smart people that can process things. And what I usually say to leaders is, why do you think that you can take it, but they can't? Right? Are
Okay.
you just cooler? Are you better? Are you more skilled? Like, why do you think you can take transparency, but your team can't? Right? I mean, that always ends up being a little bit of a tricky question, because ultimately what they're saying is, I'm better than they are in
Right.
some
Yeah.
form or fashion,
They're
right?
so fragile. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
right. And it's like, that's BS, right? And so, but when you really start to challenge them on these things, then this just their own humanness and the insecurities and things start to come out, which is great because you can work with that, right? Once we understand it, we can work with it. But if we don't take the time to really kind of dig into the human in front of us to actually get the behavior change that we're looking for, if we're just trying to demand the behavior change and saying, beatings will continue until morale improves, we're never going to get anywhere. Like, we have to
Right.
work with the humans in front of us.
And early on, we were talking about values and culture, and you were talking about how values are really often customer facing. Well, whether you're a nonprofit and you have a mission to execute, and your customer is the community or some part of the community, or you're for profit and your customer is somebody who's paying you for a good or a service, communicating with them during times of change is really important. And often the people communicating with them the most are your frontline employees who aren't getting necessarily all the information. So, talk about crafting customer conversations in a way that your delivery team or your customer service team on the phone or whoever can answer the right questions for clients.
Yeah. So I like to use this idea of getting to the nine, right? So 6 plus 3 equals 9. And if we spend all of our time telling our team members, when you see a 6, find a 3, because that'll equal 9. Because our team members are going to see 2s, they're going to see 18s, and they're going to see all sorts of things. And so at the end of the day, we need to get really clear on the 9, right? What is the actual message that we want to communicate to our customers? It's a message of clarity, it's a message of confidence, it's a message of compassion, whatever that is. But then giving a lot of different examples of what that could look like, and then empowering the team to choose what makes the most sense to communicate with confidence, clarity, and compassion, right? And asking them, tell me how you did that, and checking in and recognizing when it's working. But if we're constantly scripting, then there's no possible way that we can ever account for every single question that's going to come from the customer or concern that's going to come from the customer. So we don't want them just to hunt for 6s and 3s, because the equation looks different. And so you need, as a frontline service team member, to be able to evaluate the equation and say, okay, here's how I get to my 9 here. This customer needs more clarity in this spot. They seem to be pretty good in the communication piece. They need more compassion here, whatever that is. But those elements have to be clear in the outcome that we're looking for. And then the key thing here is when you're working through that initial change is to observe and coach and recognize, right? So you have to get with the people to see how they're approaching these things and coach them and tell them when they're doing it right. That is the key to performance management. Is we want to not do these behaviors, we want to repeat these behaviors. But if you don't actually observe what your team members are doing and make that a part of your regular day, even if you do peer observations, right? Maybe it's something that the leader can't take on. So you're saying, okay, we'll do at least one peer observation a day and help your team member with what that could look like.
Hmm.
But just making sure that it's extremely clear what outcome we're looking for, and that we weave that into every single communication, every single coaching, every single recognition. So that starts to become that, North Star, that no matter what's happening over here, I can still focus in on what that North Star is. So, but you have to equip them and spend time with them. You can't just say, "Hey, wake up tomorrow a new person and do this thing." Like they're just not going to. Behavior change takes time, and you need to invest time to get the behavior change that you're looking for.
I really like that confidence, clarity, and compassion. If you don't have a book already on that topic, I think you've got a great title. I love consummation, I love alliteration, but I think those are the three things that we really, one of our core values are always act as one with compassion and respect, and and that's I think that compassion part through all of this change, understanding, yeah, some of us are going to have bad days because of this, and we're not going to be comfortable. We're going to be out of our comfort zones, and sometimes our clients aren't going to be thrilled with it. Sometimes we're going to get that call, and the clients, going to tell us, "Hey, this doesn't work for me. We're moving on," and you're lucky if they're that sweet and lovable about it
Yeah,
sometimes,
right,
and so
right.
and so just having that, that confidence, hey, we're going to be okay. We've got a plan. We're going to work the plan. That clarity of what the plan is. Here's how we're going to communicate it. And that compassion, just saying, you know what, this is going to affect different people different ways. And as a group, we're going to muddle through and take care of one another as we go through it.
Yes.
So last question, I've taken up way more of your time than you committed. So send me a bill. But we a lot of our audience are entrepreneurs and small business owners, but a lot of them, as you would guess from the name, are HR folks.
Hmm.
So in these times of real, challenge and change, disruption in the organization, what do you think HR's primary focus ought to be, either as they deal with senior leadership and as they deal with the team at large?
Yeah. I think that HR needs to be the the expert in behavior change. I mean, I know that sounds so weird, but really understanding the human that drives us, right? How our brains work, how our hearts work, how stories work, like all the things that people in operations don't necessarily think about. The finance person doesn't necessarily think about. The CEO doesn't necessarily think about. The marketing person doesn't necessarily think about. um, and so, assuming we understand the business strategy and where we need to go, like HR people need to steep in the behavior of humans and how to settle the troops, how to inspire action, how to fill the gaps that our brain creates that, if gone unfilled, can be detrimental. Like investing in the psychology of it is huge. I've never been a person that, loves benefit strategy, or,
Oof, yeah.
reviewing the handbook, or, that kind of thing. I've just loved the human element of human resources.
Mhm.
And when you can help everybody in the organization. And that's where I found my extreme value, is helping the leaders and other, executives, whatever, to really understand the human engaging in our environment and how we can design for that with intention to get these results that they've never been able to see before because they've been focusing on the black and white and on the numbers and on the metrics, which we have to, but there's humans that choose behaviors every day that drive the numbers, that drive the metrics, right? There's decision frameworks that we can help people get to the right decision on their own by how we set up messaging. Like, there's so many cool nuances for how we can work with our humans that we leave untapped because we're so focused on the downstream metrics. When
Right.
if we can focus on the upstream humans, the organizational performance can just skyrocket.
And I think that's going to be the future of HR because
Yeah.
AI is going to impact HR heavy.
Yep.
All the transactional stuff we do on a daily basis, it won't be very long before everybody has an agent on their desktop
Yep.
that answers their benefits questions,
Yeah.
tells them how much PTO they are, what the policy is for this or that. And all that transactional stuff is going to be automated.
Yeah.
It's got to happen
Yeah.
because our organizations have to be competitive with everybody else using it. And so, and it's kind of that catch 22 because HR people care about people generally, and it pains them to see people lose their roles but you're not going to have empathy. You're not going to have connection with an AI, and that for whoever's left in HR in 5 years, that's going to be their job
Yes.
primarily. How do we win hearts and minds? How do we make people comfortable and secure that they're coming to a place where they matter? And they're not viewed as just another, a flesh robot coming in to do the work and leave.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. 100%. You're a smart guy, Mike.
Oh, that's what I keep telling them. So, but thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it, Monica.
Yeah, I had a lovely time. Thanks for having me.
And thank you for listening. If you enjoyed this episode, please write us a review on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, or wherever you're listening. And then share this episode on your favorite social media platform. It helps us reach more listeners, and it helps us not get shadow banned because apparently social media hates people who just post videos and do stuff and then there's no interaction. So please just go out there and like it and put a little comment or share it. It helps other people find us and keeps us on the air. And we'd love to hear your thoughts at goodmorninghr.com. Good Morning HR is produced by Marianne Hernandez and Paco Corral on Imperative's marketing team. The Good Morning HR theme music was created by Steve Pegler at HR Strategies of Texas. And I'm Mike Coffey. As always, don't hesitate to reach out if I can be of service to you personally or professionally. I'll see you next week, and until then, be well, do good, and keep your chin up.